Welcome back to our discussion. So we're where we left off last time with our discussion of font family within this tag selector or element selector of body, and we discussed how body was the overall container for all of the visible HTML that you see on the screen, and that font family is inherited. So we see either the Arial or Helvetica font, depending on what system you're on, or a sans serif font if those fonts aren't available on the system. And we see this, and it's inherited here by the paragraph tags that follow. So it's an inherited element. And let's talk a little bit more about why this structure is necessary. So fonts are a system resource. They're local on a computer. So when you're on a Windows machine, you have the fonts that Microsoft installed typically. Now you can go out and buy additional fonts if you're a designer. You might do that, or download additional fonts and add them to your system resources. Those are still fonts that are pretty much local to your machine and not guaranteed to be on anybody else's machine. Particularly a problem for web page designers, where you want your web page to render on virtually any computer, any browser that might want to look at your web page. You want to broaden your customer base and your distribution of whatever you're designing. So that's why this structure exists, and it's not really general. It's not really specific to general. That's the way I first interpreted font family when I first learned it. But no, this is typically the way Windows will call out this font, and this is typically the way the similar font on a Mac system, Helvetica. That's actually the real name of it. And then finally a sans serif. So let's talk about sans serif font. Sans serif font is with that little feet on the end of the letters. And you can see, here's an example on this page actually of a serif font here in the body text of this paragraph. And later on, we'll get over into the HTML and the CSS and figure out why this one's a serif font where all of these others inherit this font. But this plus this paragraph with a serif font is the way the designers are taught to design pages, or even not just web pages, but pages in textbooks. Now that you know that, you'll see it. Headings are typically sans serif fonts, and body text has serif fonts. That's the typical layout. And it's thought that sans serif fonts are prettier, more eye-catching, and so are used for short pieces of text that are headers that you need to draw attention to. Think of a table of contents in a textbook. Textbook typically will have, say, a chapter heading and then subheadings, and all of those will be sans serif font. They might be different, but they'll be sans serif fonts, whereas the body text have serifs. And the thought is that serifs help you read blocks of text where it helps you go from one letter to the other. So for large blocks of text, designers are taught that serif fonts are the way to go. Now I'm going to comment out this block of code. I'm going to have to take away this comment here before I do that, because you can't nest comments reliably in CSS. It depends on how the browser interprets it, how the nested comments are interpreted. So we're not going to do that. I'll hit Control// in Visual Studio Code and comment out this body tag, and we'll see then, once I save this, this is the way that CSS or the style of the web page is by default. And you can see that it's counter to what designers are taught. They're all serif fonts all the way down. That might deter some people from using, for example, headers and CSS, but don't. Remember, headers, header 1 through 6, are semantic tags. They mean these are headers. And then you can style it the way that you wish. So that's what we've done here. So I'll resave this, and we'll get our web page back to where it was. Now this font family list, you don't typically need to engineer this on your own. They're pretty much established and standard for, let's say, a Microsoft appearing font, a Macintosh appearing font, and then the general generic name for it. Those are worked out already. So, for example, here's an example. You can find many resources on this. If you just do a search engine for a font family, you'll see many examples. Here's one of them. So here's font family settings here, and different results as well. So those are planned out for you already, or engineered for you already. You don't have to come up with your own font family in general unless you have a very specific purpose. So that concludes our discussion of this. We've gone over the tag selector for the body tag and discussed how this is inherited all the way down. And we've discussed how font families work in web pages. Next, we'll continue our discussion of selectors.